This is a totally different feeling kind of chapter, and it involves Winifred Helm, who's referred to in the first. She's the pastor of the Words Friends of Jesus Church, and she's married to Jacob, and they have an 11-year-old boy named August. And let's see, Winnie in the town that Winnie's church is in, her husband Jacob owns a repair shop with a little craft shop in back. He's the sole owner and operator of this little repair shop. This is called Intimate Imperatives. Outside the Words repair shop, Winnie nosed her little car between a piece of unrecognizable farm machinery and a heap of twisted metal. Her husband's work generated an astonishing amount of refuse, and she often thought of the little shop as a cement block creature, feeding on oil and electricity and eliminating ferrous waste through its windows and doors. She climbed out of her car and smoothed her clothes over her body, flattening a few wrinkles. Inside, the shop had once again been furnished with a new haphazard arrangement of chainsaws, lawnmowers, garden tractors, pumps, generators, tillers, 3- and 4-wheelers, and farm implements needing repair. Surrounded by his well-worn shop manuals, machines, tools, testing equipment, grease guns, and other things that Winnie could not readily identify, Jacob stood on the other side of the building, hunched over a howling bench grinder. He did not hear her come in. A bright stream of yellow sparks erupted from the piece of metal he was pressing against the abrasion wheel. Directly above the workbench, grayish-white clumps of smoke clung to the ceiling and smelled like shorted-out toasters. Choosing her path carefully, Winnie made her way around to him. Jacob turned off the grinder and removed his goggles. "Winifred, what a surprise." His face, neck, forearms, and hands were black, except where the goggles had been, and his smile seemed unusually white. Fragments of burnt metal embedded his forehead, a primitive yet not an entirely unattractive form of jewelry. He put down the bar of steel he'd been grinding. "Hello, Jacob," she said. Eye contact made them real to each other again. Animal warmth hurried out of him, attached to her, and woke up their shared history of unrehearsed movements, unplanned utterances, natural smells, and the silent warble of comforting connubial habits. She smiled, and Jacob came closer. More layers of their public selves peeled away, replaced by the familiar, latent excitement that normally characterized their nearness to each other. Winnie cherished Jacob's need for more passion from her, and sometimes imagined that for him, consciousness primarily consisted of an awareness of his own sexual instinct, his only gateway to rapture. God had thankfully created this vital opportunity for bliss, yet Winnie remained convinced there were many, many more avenues which could be followed toward divine pleasure. People could also become hyper-conscious of practically anything taking place inside or outside of them. It was possible. The sight of a hummingbird, even the naked sound of its thrumming wings, had once revealed to her how she had once long ago lived with tiny black feet and a nectar-searching tongue. Her shoulders remembered the thrilled rhythms. On another occasion, the taste of a strawberry had related its entire history of self-propelled spirit into matter. All human sensations could, she believed, provide paths to the same ecstatic worship. But the principalities of civilization had hidden most of these gateways to heightened awareness, and now, for many people, the only way back to the blessed original state involved a spectacular sexual event. And while Winnie rejoiced as much as anyone else in extraordinary sexual events, she sometimes feared that keeping the species alive had nearly replaced being alive, and the entire galaxy of spontaneous felt unity threatened to become perversely focused on one narrow impulse. But as soon as she entertained this thought, Jacob picked up an orange oil rag and began rubbing off his thick hands in a vigorous and methodical manner. The simple action seemed so artfully performed that it implied a level of satisfaction with his work that she understood little about. Perhaps he knew of many avenues to heightened awareness that she did not, and this greatly amused her to think about. "Jacob, we need to talk," she said. "Good," he said, his voice cheerful, almost musical. "Can I get you something to drink?" "No, thank you." "What do you want to talk about?" He sat beside her on the ripped seat of a four-wheeler, his teeth gleaming at her from the surrounding darkness of his sooty face. She looked for somewhere clean to sit and stayed standing. "You have far more work here than you can do yourself," she said. "It keeps you from sleeping well and steals from the time you spend with August and me. And there's absolutely no reason for it." "I thought you said I had more work than I could do," he said playfully. His smile suggested he might not be taking her seriously, and she felt something inside her harden. "You could have someone else working for you. Another person could do all the things you can't do yourself in a reasonable working day. You could hire someone." "We can't afford that," said Jacob. "Yes, we can," said Winnie. "It's necessary." "No, we can't. Besides, you already make more money than I do, and if I have to pay someone else, I'll be even further behind." "That's ridiculous, Jacob. You don't make more money because some of your customers don't pay enough, and you let them get away with it. The economy's gone south, and people pay what they think they can." A truck pulled in the lot, and after several clanking, scraping, and banging sounds, an older man came in with a weed eater. "Good afternoon, Pastor Winifred," he said. "Hello, Mr. Roebuck." Jacob nodded imperceptibly in greeting, and Wally nodded back. Leaving them alone, Winnie went into the craft room and spoke briefly with a woman behind the counter. She was knitting a red sweater from a muskmelon-sized ball of yarn lying on the floor. Winnie looked through some of the items on display. One black and green potholder had been made to look like a face, and it continued to haunt her even after she stopped looking at it. Something about the sewn mouth made her think about pure evil, which surprised her because the concept no longer held a respected place in her collection of thinking utensils. Its sudden appearance in her mind seemed a little like coming upon a long-forgotten article of clothing in the attic, and she made a mental note to later contemplate how discarded pieces of herself could be so handily attached, ready for conscious service. When she rejoined Jacob in the shop, he was alone again. Sunlight fell through the open doors, making it seem as though there were two separate areas, one light and one dark. The dust motes could only be seen filling the bright area. "So who do you want me to hire?" asked Jacob. "Oh, I'm sure there are many reliable workers who'd be pleased at the opportunity of sharing your responsibility," said Winnie. "For some reason I think you have someone in mind," he said, picking a piece of jewelry out of his forehead. "Why do you think that?" "Oh, just a guess." And he smiled again in a way that suggested he might be thinking about sex, in addition to not taking her seriously. From then on, her voice assumed a slightly angry tone. "I think you should hire the Bookchester boy." "Isn't he in prison?" "Yes." "He's not a boy, and I don't want to hire him." "He's almost 15 years younger than you are, and why not?" "He's been in prison for over 10 years, Winifred." "That's all the more reason. Without a sponsor, he might not be released this summer or ever. You have no idea the unholy place that prison is. I try to get you to visit, but you won't. That building is a monument to the ignorant cruelty of our civilization. The damage it does is unspeakable. Our nation has more people in prison than any other country on earth. It's an abomination, and it mocks all the civic ideals we profess to believe in. It's essential to get him out of there as soon as possible." "He's in the supermax because he's violent," said Jacob, and he arranged the position of the socket set on a workbench. "It should be beneath you, Jacob, to repeat the same stories the government uses to frighten people with. Men are sent to maximum security prisons for such small infractions and not looking straight ahead when the guards shackle them. Blake Bookchester is not overly violent, and even if he was a little impulsive a long time ago, he's changed. He reads books and thinks about them. I've been visiting him, and I know. You know the part of him he wants you to see." "That's unfair, Jacob. Everyone shows their best side." true, but Blake apparently has more he's not showing to most of us. He was arrested for carrying over 2 pounds of black tar heroin and convicted for drug trafficking. He wasn't the only one. There were other arrests around the same time. There was a man working at the foundry with connections to a Mexican drug cartel. He had a number of young people delivering those drugs for him. 5 or 6 of them were caught as well. Yes, but unlike the others, Blake put the officer who arrested him in the hospital. 8 years later, he was sent to Lockbridge because he hit a guard at the Waupun prison. His own father told me. Oh, I know all about that, said Winnie. Blake understands those were mistakes. Mistakes? All of us fall short of the people we'd like to be, but we keep on trying, and so does Blake. He knows about machinery. He knows how to fix things. He's been a mechanic before. He's not working here. Winnie took a deep breath, slowly blew it out, and threw her head back. A neighborhood cat crept cautiously in the open garage door, hurried into a darkened corner, and disappeared underneath a shelf of oil cans and a coil of chain. Jacob, we have a predatory criminal justice system in this country run by people who in one way or another make money from its operation. They keep inmates from getting out because profits accrue from them staying in. Whenever there's a possibility for meaningful penal reform, the prison lobby advertises the few really horrible crimes. Everyone gets frightened and keeps as quiet as rabbits. Meanwhile, people who should never have been locked up in the first place die on the floors of their cells because they can't get medications they need, and others simply go crazy. Imagine, Jacob, what it would be like to live in a cement room all year long, eating food shoved through an iron grate, never seeing people you love except during rare monitored visiting hours through wire and glass. That hell house in Lockbridge is nothing but a human garbage pit. Stop making speeches, Winnie. Everything I say is true. Maybe so, said Jacob, but I want no part of prisons or people who are inside them. Living without you in August would reduce me to a reptile in several weeks. I don't know how those guys survive. I couldn't. I try to imagine it, and I watch myself melting from the inside. Good, then you'll hire him. No, I won't. You said I was right, Jacob. Someone as damaged as Blake Bookchester probably can't be let loose among people who aren't trained to handle him. Brutalized people brutalize others. Jacob, the injustice must be addressed. It's a moral imperative. There's no telling what he might do. I'm sorry for what happened to him. I am, Winifred, but he's not coming here. Sometime the harm done can't be fixed. Maybe Blake should never have been sent to prison, I'll admit that, but it doesn't change the likelihood that the only life for him now is in prison. You're afraid of him, Jacob. I'm not. All right, I am. He's unpredictable. His own father's afraid of him. Those who see the injustices in our society, Jacob, are obliged to do something about that. How can you live with yourself? Well, the way most people do, I guess, with difficulty. I knew you'd be like this, said Winnie. And I knew this was coming, said Jacob. What was coming? This discussion. No, you didn't. You talk in your sleep, Winifred. You've been worrying about this for months. Jacob, you can't bring up something intimate between us and expect to win today, because you won't. I'm right about this, and you know it. And I don't talk in my sleep. You do. Then you shouldn't be listening. You say the same things over and over again. Winnie paused. Besides, I already told them you'd sponsor Blake. Told who? The prison authorities asked for the name of 2 sponsors, and I wrote down yours and mine. It's done now, and nothing can change it. He's going to live with his father and work here. Winifred, that better not be true. It is, she said. I'll undo it. Jacob, please. I thought you'd understand. When I started visiting Blake, he seemed like many others, but he wasn't. I care about him. Deep inside me in that quiet, still place, that narrow room where there's only a small group of people, for some reason he's now among them. I tried to keep him out, but he got in anyway. What could I do? I don't control who gets in, and I'll never forgive myself if we don't help him. Well, at least you're talking about something real now, said Jacob. I'm sorry, said Winnie. I should have started here, but in the first place, but I didn't know how to begin. It seemed too much to ask, just on my account. Why can't he work for someone else? No one else will have him. Okay, he can work here. To be completely honest, I decided 2 days ago it probably wouldn't hurt. Winnie stepped back. No, you didn't, she said, throwing her head back. I did. 2 nights ago when you woke up again, I just wanted to see if it was possible to talk you out of it. I mean, I think it's a bad idea, Winifred, but I also know you well enough to know if I win the argument, you'll only get stronger from losing. And several days later, you'll be back more determined. Then you'll let him work here? Yes. And you're not angry with me? Winnie leaned against a short wooden stepladder that looked fairly clean. No. Jacob, if you already knew you'd do this, then you were just pretending to listen, weren't you? You weren't taking anything I said seriously. Deep inside of me, said Jacob, there are only 2 other people, you and August. I tried to let more in, but like you say, we're not in control. There's just you 2. And whatever you say or do will never change that. Only 2? That's kind of sad, Jacob. I know. Well, there's one other, but he doesn't count. Why not? He's dead. You mean July? Yes. Oh, the dead can get in there too, said Winnie. You can't keep them out. They have ways of getting in that the living don't know about. And I was trying to take you seriously, Winnie. I really was. I just kept thinking how soft your skin is behind your ears. I hate you, said Winnie, and she kissed him. When she drew away, her mouth, cheeks, and the end of her nose were black. Thank you.